right, here we go. I know that you've all been sitting for a little while, so I think we might try something a little different. I would like you to start moving your right foot. When I change slides, you can quit. Okay? I'll talk fast. All right, so I want to cover 3 primary articles in this. I want to talk about the Gateways credentials in terms of competencies, resource, and our new credentials, share a little bit of workforce information and data, and then some successful strategies. You quit moving your foot, right? All right, so Gateways, credentials, and competencies. You know, you have a one-page handout in your folder. I am not going to go over that, so be sure you take a look at that if you have some questions about where they originated and what some of the progress has been. You've been hearing a lot about how our ECE workforce works in many settings, and the educational requirements are often tied to funding streams. It is a challenging system, and coupled with that, we need more people to be coming into the field. So credentials are something that we think can help clarify and perhaps be a unifying standard for teacher preparation across all of our settings. You heard Kathy talk a little bit about the placement of credentials in Accelerate and what a pop that was. It kind of put credentials on the map, so to speak. Both Kathy and Ashley talked about the Children's Cabinet Workforce Project and the way in which it was using credentials or has some connectors to credentials. And after several years of meetings, Tina referenced the wonderful work that the ECAG group did in terms of tying professional educator licensure to the ECE Level 5. We also, Ann talked about credentials and their development and how they can meet some of the new federal requirements through CCDF funding. So what was created 10 years ago has, you know, so much relevance today. And then Carol also shared the Illinois Director credentials already in licensing, but conversations are underway about movement in terms of other credentials. You're going to hear workshops. John and Nancy are doing back-to-back workshops in terms of competencies. Wendy and Diane are providing technical assistance in terms of questions on competencies, and we brought in a national expert. I hope that by the time you leave the forum, your questions on competencies have been answered. That's the goal, okay? Start wiggling your left foot. All right, so Gateways has a brand new website. It's been in planning for a year and we launched it. It's wonderful. I love it. Go to www.ilgateways.com if you can manage to be on your phone while you're wiggling a foot. I'm sure some of you are multidextrous and you can probably do that. I would fall over, so I'm going to keep my feet on the ground up here. At the top of this website, there's a wonderful bar. You can click on professional development. Here, I needed to move down one. Whoops. I see my papers jotted forward here a little bit, so my apologies. You can click on professional development. Right under that is higher education, and underneath that are 5 different tabs. The first tab is a directory of higher education programs in the state. The second tab is how do I become entitled? There's a landing page for every credential. So if you want to know how to become entitled for the ECE or the School Age and Youth Development credential or the Family Child Care credential, you got your own landing page with all the information you need. The third tab shows a career lattice. The fourth tab shows information about the Entitled Review Group. Much as the process that Tina shared, I just want to make sure and remind everyone that there's an Entitled Review Group. When you send in your application to be entitled, it is reviewed by faculty peers. We rotate people on and off that group in 3-year cycles. We make sure there's 2- and 4-year faculty represented, and somebody's an expert in all the different credentials and areas in which we entitle. So I think those are notes, they're meetings, you know, who's on the committee, so there's an entire landing page all about the Entitled Review Group. And then the 5th tab is the tab that you are all going to just love. It's the ECE Toolbox. This ECE Toolbox is screenshot up now is very robust. Check this out while you're here at the forum. We'd like to hear if there's a tool that you need, something that you need us to have developed. That would be wonderful feedback to have. I would say by May 1st, but let's just say by the first week of May. Let's give ourselves a little bit of latitude here. There's rubrics and assessments that are going to be posted for all 7 of the Gateways credentials. Some are up now for different credentials. They're not all fully up yet, but they are coming, and they are coming very soon. So make sure you go back and check some of these toolbox. We want this to be your toolbox. If you have an assessment or tool or something that you think is really cool, share it with us. We can post it or insert it. We would love that. Everybody's familiar with YouTube, right? Start shaking your right hand. Okay, everybody's familiar with YouTube. We have a webcast series that you can watch via YouTube that covers a wide range of topics and information that can support you with embedding competencies within your program. It covers everything from where do these competencies come from how do I map competencies to my curriculum. You click on it, there's 9 different topics. Pick on what's of interest to you or where you need assistance. Share this with colleagues as well. We've already been getting feedback from people like, that is so cool. I love that. That was really helpful. It honed in on and answered just the question that I had. These tools and resources were developed by faculty for faculty. Again, we want your input. Do you need something else? Which ones are the most helpful to you? What other materials or aligning resources might you need? Okay, left hand's going up, right? Gonna wiggle, wiggle, wiggle. Gateways has 4 new credentials. Big thanks to the Illinois Department of Human Services for their ongoing direction and support in the development of all credentials, but especially to the Governor's Office of Early Childhood, who really dedicated Race to the Top funds to fast forward and ensure we got the development of that family child care and family specialists and technical assistance credentials across the finish line. So in light of what you've heard today, and you've heard just different bits and pieces of data, I want you to think about that family child care workforce out there that serves tens of thousands of children here in Illinois. There's a very large audience for that family child care credential. And already both ISB, Illinois State Board of Education, and our Head Start colleagues are using the family specialist credential. So what we did in the landing pages on the website for these new credentials, we tried to put a little bit of workforce data that you could use so you would know how robust is this workforce. If I design some courses here, what's the likely number of people that might be interested in this? So that's something we haven't done before. So again, let us know if that's helpful and if you need more. So that would be good information for us to have. A report was published on every single one of these credentials. If you don't have it and you'd like it, let Andy know. We'll send you an electronic copy. If your school is listed here, you get to stand up and wiggle. Stand up and applaud yourself. If your school's listed, please stand up. Look at all those schools that are listed. Come on, guys. There's 20 schools up there. We ought to have at least 20 people standing up. All right. These are the individuals or their colleagues who did the pilots for all of these credentials. And there's a couple of schools who piloted more than one simultaneously. I'm not quite sure how they did that, but a couple of different departments. But that is a lot of work. We could not do it without you. These credentials were piloted and assessed and reviewed, and faculty had wonderful input, both from their viewpoint as well as from that of students. So thank you, all of you, for that work. Next is workforce information and data. Okay, I want to move on to that a little bit. What haven't we moved yet? Have you moved your right hand and your left hand? Time to the left hand maybe here. All right, workforce data. I don't want to do a deep dive because, again, you've heard bits and pieces of this, but the data that you're looking at or that we're going to share here in just a second comes from the Gateways Registry with 81,500 active and current members. As Ann mentioned, the data coming this next fall after that license exempt group comes in, by the next form, it's going to be fascinating to see what we have. Right now, some of the data that I'm going to share with you comes from licensed child care center programs. Head Start, early Head Start are pretty much included within that. We really have minimal preschool for all data, so I just want to make sure that they're not in here. And there are some licensed family child care that are already in here as well. I just have to keep thinking about, as much as we're concerned about filling classes and numbers, the U.S. Bureau of Labor Statistics Occupational Outlook Handbook, it's kind of a big mouthful there, isn't it? But it projects a 14% growth rate in early childhood careers. And I just looked at a recent update and it was pushing it closer to 16%. So in Illinois, we know we already have vacant positions. So I just keep thinking we are going to just be tipping over into massive demand, I think sooner rather than later. I stuck this slide in here. I'm much like Kathy. I don't know what it is that we can precisely do about wages. I know I personally can't impact this. I know you personally can't. And I know any single agency cannot fix this. But collectively, all of us together and all the agencies together can probably come up with some strategies to have these discussions and think about what we need to do about compensation. The good news is that wages do go up with increased levels of education. The bad news is they don't go very high. Okay. All right, so then I wanted to share with you a little bit in thinking about our workforce in terms of degree completion and diversity. So if we set compensation aside, we are not going to be able to fix it in the next 10 minutes, but we have to keep it on our radar. We have to keep it on our radar. We still have to strengthen the pipelines and create opportunities to get more students in all of our classrooms. Reaching out to teacher assistants could be a way in local license centers to get them to move up into that teacher role, or looking at our licensed family child care providers. They have already demonstrated they have a commitment to the field and a passion for early care and education. But what you can tell from this chart is we got a bigger lift. Our licensed center assistant teachers and our family child care owners have very different education levels. We're very pleased and proud here in Illinois that it's like 87% of our directors have degrees, and it's like 76% of our teachers in licensed centers have degrees. Well, this changes to like 30% of licensed teacher assistants have degrees and 35% of family child care. So if that's going to be our pipeline, we're going to have to build that pipeline strong with a lot of resources and information. Whoops, I do want to stay on this slide just one more moment because, you know, we had a lot of conversation thinking about our children and our families in the state and what a richness of diversity and language we have, but we also know our teachers are not as representative of that richness of children and families. So one of the things we do notice is that about 2/3 of our center directors and teachers are Caucasian. But when you start looking at teacher assistants, it's 50% Caucasian and 50% either African American, Latino, Hispanic, Asian, so it's like a 50-50. And then when you look at family child care, it shifts again. It's 60% African American or Latino or Asian, Hispanic, and 40% Caucasian. So as we think about that pipeline, it is also potentially a way to really think about increasing some of the diversity. Our license exempt population, anecdotally, we believe will also be very diverse. But again, until they're in the registry and we have more information, we just can't say that with any great clarity. One additional fact for all of us to think about is our birth to 3, our infant, toddler teachers. Education levels are lower collectively when we average them than compared to our preschool teacher education levels. So we need to really think about how, again, that's the age at which we actually would like a more robust education. We'd like them to really know what we're doing with those infants and toddlers. So it's another opportunity perhaps for us to be able to reach out. You have these entitled maps in your folder. I'm not going to go over each of these. These talk a little bit about what the number of our institutions were that were either entitled for infant toddler, Illinois Director Credential, or ECE. We'll be building maps like that for all the new credentials moving forward. The last thing I want to talk about, and it's a single slide here, is I heard Ashley say, think outside the box. Think outside the box. And at the Governor's Office of Early Childhood's initiation, INCRA had a meeting with McCormick Foundation. It's been almost 3 years ago. This project doesn't end until May. Nevertheless, we gave you 3 or 4 page report in your folder because what we found is so informative and could be so helpful to you in your programs. We didn't want to wait until next year's forum. We tested all kinds of strategies in the city of Chicago to help move our infant toddler teachers toward attainment of an infant toddler credential. The lessons that we learned are relationships matter, and things like employer support is a key factor. I think to Ashley's point, do you know who the center directors are? Are you reaching out to them with coursework? Are you having conversations? Do you know who your family child care providers are in your community to pull them into your classrooms? Barriers, enrollment, cost of books, timing, modality. So, for example, we found that with a $200 cost of a textbook, it's 50% of the wages, I'm talking gross wages, not take home, of a week's pay for these teachers. They cannot afford that. So we had to get really creative, and what can we do about the cost of textbooks? We ended up with a 95 to 90, we had one of the 2-year cycles had about a 98% completion rate, the other 95. In terms of securing the infant toddler credential, I think that's like phenomenal. The way in which, again, our classes ended up, they were about 85 to 90% ethnically diverse and about 10 to 15% Caucasian. So we really hit on a few key factors here. We ended up awarding almost 300 infant toddler credentials and the same number of ECE credentials. Large numbers of our infant toddler teachers they have gaps in that ECE coursework before they can get to the infant toddler credential. So you've got some findings in your folder. I encourage you to please take a look at that. We all know how important early childhood is. I gave you a link to Heckman's most recent publication. It talks about a 13% return on investment. We need to message that outside the field, far and wide. So I would thank all of you for being the front line that really supports a well-educated and prepared early childhood workforce here in Illinois. Thank you.